For years, I've been using this push block that has a pin on the bottom. I recently upgraded by adding a tracker runner piece to the pin, but I really don't like the length of this, so I'm going to cut it down, and this is what I came up with. It does basically the same thing. It's got the pin on the bottom, but with this, it's not depending on a blade, and it's also got this grippy surface, which gives you just a little bit more gripping power. To get started, you'll need a 6 5/8 by 6 5/8 square. I have a free pattern that you can download off my website, but we're going to go ahead and roughly cut around this shape. Now we'll go ahead and glue our pattern to our square. But it's really important that our grain direction goes this way. So the end grain's on the top and the bottom here. I'll just use wood glue. And again, our grain pattern needs to be this direction for our curve to go up like that. We'll go ahead and attach it. We'll now take a 1/4 inch rod. We'll go with this oak, and we're going to lower our blade. If you look at it, we're just slightly above the dowel here, maybe about a 1/16 of an inch. I think I'm going to lower it just a hair. Just like that. Now with this fully dry, and it really needs to be dry because we're going to be pushing it up against the fence here, we're going to cut a notch out on this side. That would be where this curve comes in like this. What we'll do is we'll move our fence close to the blade, and we're going to try to hit the center of our board here. So I'm just going to move this enough that it looks like it's in the center. That's about center right there. Again, with the curved side here, we'll run it through the table saw. Now that I've ran it through once, I'm going to flip it and do the same thing again. I'm going to move my fence over about, a 1/16 of an inch or so, and I'll do it again. I'll check to see if it fits inside of here, and it doesn't yet. So I'll move my fence over again, just a hair, and I'll go one way, then flip it and do the other way. Each time I checked it until this 1/4 inch dowel fit right inside there. We want it to fit and have just a little bit of a gap. So we don't want it to be really snug. We want it to be loose. I've now got a strip of, I think it's a 1x2 pine. It doesn't have to be fancy. The thickness is just as thick as the last piece, so it's 3/4 of an inch thick. This is 14 inches long. I did this long so that I could cut it on my table saw without having to worry about getting my fingers too close to the blade. We're going to take a ruler now, and we want to mark at 6 7/8 on the edge. So right about there. This is the section right here that we want. I'll set my fence so that it's 1/8 of an inch away from the blade. I'll raise my blade up so I can cut through the top of this here. I'll go ahead and use a square on it. This is my good section over here. This is the part I'm going to hold on to. And I'll go ahead and cut until I get to that line. There we go. Now I'll just take a little handsaw, and I'm going to cut right on that to cut this piece off. There we go, that's what we're looking for. This will fit on the side, we're gonna glue it on, and we'll have that channel down the center. Now I'll take some glue, and I'm just gonna get that edge. Obviously we don't wanna get it anywhere inside that gap. Make sure you double check that there's no glue in there. We'll add the strip to the top, and it's really important that the top part of the handle up here, that it's flat and flush with it. I'll grab a couple of these smaller clamps here. This will just help to make sure that these two boards stay flush with each other. And I'll put my clamp on. And there we go. One other thing that I want to do is I want to add some glue to the bottom here. And this is the end grain part. Now we'll let that dry and we'll come back. We'll go ahead and move our fence over so that we're cutting about 1/4 of an inch. I still have it set for my 1/8 of an inch, so I'm going to move it over another 1/8. I'll take this 1x2 that we cut last time. Here's the notch that I cut out, and I'm going to cut right over here. I'm going to go about 2 inches or so. That's what I'm looking for right there. Now I'm going to measure up 1 inch. I'll use my square. I'm going to mark that. Like last time, I'll cut it off with a handsaw. I'll find the center by connecting the diagonals again. I'll use an awl on the center. I'll drill this out with a 1/4-inch drill bit. Now that this is dry and we've cut out our piece, we're going to use something called Tracker Runner. I've made an entire video showcasing this material. I really like it. It's very rubbery. You can find it in any department store. It's a carpet based on the front of it. We'll use something called Mod Podge to attach it. Mod Podge is really just Elmer's glue that's diluted 50%. Put a scrap piece of wood down here. And I'll go back to this 1x2 that we started with. Now I could just cut it straight to the edge, right up next to the wood. But the problem is that when you glue this, because it's carpet, it will move around a little bit. So we'll go ahead and move it in about 3/8 of an inch. We'll press it down and then we'll just use a utility knife. I've got about a 12-inch strip here. We'll flip this over and now we're gonna go about 1 inch forward from the pin on the bottom. I'll draw a line there. We'll add our strip to the bottom here like that. That's what we're looking for right there. That'll fit right on top of here. I'll go ahead and soak it into this. And now I'll put this back on the top. Again, it's going to overlap a little bit on both sides. I'll grab my block that I cut earlier. And we'll go ahead and clamp that down. Okay, that's done. And we're going to glue the edge here. So we don't really need a whole lot. I will cut this off a little bit large, like I said before, so that it can move around. Like that. Now that these are both dry, I'm going to come back and I'm going to cut it off. All that excess that we added to the sides. I've got a washer here that's 1 inch in diameter. I'm going to use it to round off the back side of this. We don't want to put the washer right on the edge, but we're going to go just a little bit above it, right there. We'll move that in place. Make sure that it's flush on both sides. And then we're just gonna trace around it. Now, if you don't have a sander, a sanding block will work. It'll take you a little bit longer, but you'll be able to round all the way down. Lucky for me, I've got a strip sander and I'm just gonna do it really quick. Now I'll take my 1/4-inch dowel and it just slides right inside. And to make sure that everything fits all right, I'll go ahead and slide this in. And it looks like it swivels, but I think I'm gonna do a little bit more sanding on it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of glue on the tip, and I'm not gonna cut it to size yet. I'll just leave it long. I'll give that a chance to glue, maybe about an hour. And we'll come back. If you remember earlier, we cut 2 inches in. The first piece we made our pin on the bottom here. We're just gonna go ahead and cut this off right at the 2-inch mark. Just like before, we'll add an X to find our center and we'll use our awl. We'll drill this out like the other one at 1/4 of an inch. Now we'll string our dowel through here and here's our pin on the bottom. We want it to drop just a little bit. Maybe about right there. Before we do this, we're gonna go ahead and rough cut this to size though. It's gonna go on like this. This will eventually be glued and then we'll cut this. But we want a little tiny bit of play, just a little bit of a gap, maybe about 1/8 of an inch centers on the back pin. That way we can really grab a hold of things that are a little bit thicker, and if we're doing stuff that's thin, we can always lift it up a little bit. Before we do that though, we're gonna go ahead and cut this out. As a minimalist, your best option would be to use a coping saw, but I'm not a minimalist, I'm gonna use a bandsaw. And there we go. For the most part, it's pretty much done. We do have to string this through. We really want our hands to be comfortable on this because this is a little bit more rough. So grab a sanding block, and you don't have to do a whole lot to make it comfortable. This is 50 to 60 grit sandpaper, but this is really old, so it's more like 200 grit. I'm just gonna knock off that squareness to it, so it's just a little bit more round. And there we go. This is comfortable enough that I could push with this and not have any problems. I am gonna clean this up on the sander and then we'll go back to finishing it up. Okay, now I've cleaned this up and I did round it a little bit better. It doesn't really matter that much, but since I'm gonna put a thumbnail on this, I thought it'd make it look nice. We'll go ahead and put the pin in here and I'm just gonna coat the inside. I'll go ahead and add the pin. Again, I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a gap, so I'll pull down a little bit. So there's a little gap on the bottom. about an 1/8 inch gap. This gap is also nice because we can let it dry like this and not have to worry about it gluing to the top. We'll come back when that's dry and we'll cut the rest of it off. And we're done. And just for pure cosmetic, I'm gonna cut this a little bit more so it doesn't jut out as much. We'll take our push block and we'll line the pin up and then we'll just twist. And then as we're pushing, we're gonna be pushing this way towards the fence. And I know there's people that don't believe that this works. So I've loosened my fence up, put my push block on it, and I'm gonna push it forward and at an angle. As you can see, I'm not only pushing this way, but I'm also pushing this way. Thanks for watching. Let me know if this is something that you might build.